Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and hello everyone. My name is Hakim. We are from Group 5. Our group consists of 5 members, which are Muhammad Nakib, Muhammad Mirza, Ahmad Akhyar, Muhammad Hanif, and me myself, Amirul Hakim. So today we are going to present on the international relations, key concept, and Islamic perspective. This is our table of content. Before we go further into this topic, let me tell you about the definition of international relations. According to San Francisco State University, international relations can be defined as the relations across boundaries of nations. Under international relations, some of the fundamental concepts related to international relations are national interest, national power, national security, diplomacy, propaganda, war, and also foreign policy. In this topic, we will be focusing on the key concept of foreign policy and its effect towards Muslim refugees. So, what is United States foreign policy? The United States foreign policy is defined by its interaction with foreign countries and how it establishes standards of interaction for its system citizens, organizations, and corporations. Moreover, there are 4 main foreign policy goals that are listed by the State Department. The first goal is to protect the United States and Americans. The second goal is to advance democracy, human rights, and other global interests. The third is to foster international awareness of American values and policies. And the last one is to provide assistance to United States ambassadors, government leaders, and other staff at home and abroad who work to achieve this objective. In this project, we have come up with several research questions as a guide when doing this project, such as what is the role and importance of foreign policy in managing the international affairs of a country? The second one is what are the general guiding principles of United States foreign policy? The third one is how has the United States foreign policy dealt with Muslim refugees from around the world? All these questions will be discussed further in the other sections. I will pass this stage to the next presenter. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Ahmad Akhyar bin Zainul Abidin, and I'll talk about the role of foreign policy from Western and Islamic view. But first, let's learn about foreign policy. A country's foreign policy consists of self-interest strategies chosen by the state to safeguard its national interests and to achieve its own goal through relations with other countries. The approaches are strategically employed to interact with other countries. In in the political science, foreign policy is intended to protect the state's national interests because no state can avoid being involved in international affairs. A state's foreign policy reflects its principles and objectives. More about foreign policy, things like economic well being, political values, and national security are always some of the issues of national concern. There is a saying goes that if there is a state, then there must be a foreign policy. As we know, every country has a neighborhood, whether they want it, like it or not. Therefore, foreign policy is all about maintaining good, healthy relationship with one's neighbors. And the scope has been broadened because everyone is now in our neighborhood. And it is very important of each state to have foreign policy because no state wants to operate in complete isolation. And what is the main role and importance of foreign policy in managing the international affairs of a country? Um, First, let's take a look at the international relation definition. It tries to explain the behaviors that occur across state boundaries and institutions such as private, state, governmental, non-governmental, and intergovernmental oversee those interactions. And foreign policies are generally designed to protect a country's core values and interests, as well as its national security, ideological goals, and economic prosperity. Uh, there are three types of foreign policy objective. The first one is short range objective. It is also known as the core objectives of a country. For instance, its core values and interests. And the second one is medium range objective. It is related to trade, foreign aid, and people's economic progress, as well as raising their living standards. A state's status and prestige can only be guaranteed if it is economically stable. And the last one is the long range objective. They are plans or visions for the ultimate political or ideological organization of the international system. And however, the main principles of each country, the main principles of each country's foreign policy are pretty much similar, which is the preservation of its territorial integrity in relation to other countries, as well as its political independence. And now, we're going to talk about foreign policy from two views, in which is Western and Islam. In discussing the role of foreign policy, Western and Islam have their own way of viewing it. And first, from the Western view, for example, in the United States, two foreign policies visions have prevailed since World War II, which is isolationism and internationalism. Like during the Cold War, the main foreign policies were containment, arms control, and the use of military force, just like what happened in Vietnam. On the other hand, from the Islamic view, Islam has emphasized the principle of war and peace in managing international affairs. Islam condemns all forms of aggression and terrorism. Believers or Muslims are only permitted to fight against those who commit aggression against them. Allah gave Muslim permission to fight but made it optional. As Allah said in Al-Quran, permission to fight has been given to those who are being fought because they were wronged, and indeed Allah is competent to give them victory. Another one would be the unity of the Muslim Ummah. According to Prophet ﷺ teachings, it expresses the notion of a Muslim commonwealth. Allah declares in Al-Quran, and hold firmly to Allah's rope altogether and do not become divided. For example, our own country, Malaysia, which is a majority Muslim country, as stated in our policy, that Malaysia as a Muslim majority country values Ummah solidarity and the spirit of cooperation among the Organization of Islamic Cooperation members, OIC. And that would be all from me. Thank you.
Rahim. My name is Muhammad Mirza, and I will be talking about the guiding principles of the United States of America foreign policy. All countries will be dealing with another countries, so the relation between countries are dealt according to the US foreign policy in terms of protection of country, global interest, awareness of American foreign policy, assistance to American ambassadors. So these four are the basic functions of the foreign policy that will be used by the United States of America to deal with other countries and foreigners. The list of the guiding principles of the US foreign policy. These guiding principles are actually targets and guidances for the US foreign policy to achieve peace. So, for the first guiding principles is do not entangle alliances, which means be careful with your allies because there are possibilities of the ally to betray. If we refer back to the history of America and France, there are part of events which the United States and France are allies, but finally it is betrayed by the France. So for the second one is strong and comprehensive feature, which means this foreign policy can be used all the time and able to solve every problems between countries. For an example, US and Cuba relation in 1980. Complete neutrality. It is important to achieve clean politics between countries, but it is really hard to maintain it. This is because if we refer back to the history, the US did neutral for some time, but there are also times that the United States of America is not completely neutral. Next, freedom of seas, which means it is free for any country to move in the seas for trading and others, except into the war zones. This is because if a country cross over the war zones of a country, of other countries, it will be considered as an intruder and it can end up as war if there are infringement. The fifth is to protect the United States of America itself and diplomacy with other countries in the world. As an example, to other countries, the United States of America need to have the foreign policy in order to have a good diplomacy with other countries in the world. Next, the diplomacy between countries is important for US. With this foreign policy, it will lead the United States and the world to achieve peace. On to the foreign policy that apply to the refugee. What is the meaning of refugee? Refugee refers to a person who is unable or unwilling to return to his or her home country because of a well-founded fear of persecution due to race, membership in a particular social group, political opinion, religion, or national origin. There are three main steps for the refugee to enter United States. The first one would be the United States of America will first decide how many refugees that they will welcome and receive. Next, the refugee will pass security screening, then if falls in the refugee's admission ceiling limit. The limit are decided by United States just now in the first step. Next, the last steps would be they will go through interviews conducted by officers in the US Citizenship and Immigration Service.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nakib Amin and I will be talking about US foreign policy towards Muslim refugees, especially from Muslim countries. The earliest migration of Muslim communities in the United States was dated back in the early 16th century. However, their settlements in the United States were not delightful since the main purpose of them migrating mostly from Africa was because of the slave trades. There were many records for the actual number of Muslim population that have migrated into the US. For instance, Ellen D. Austin suggested that 40,000 of them came at once into the United States alone, while Sylvian Diouf argued that about 2.25 million of Muslim slaves came across North and South America and the Caribbean. The poor living condition of their original homeland due to tragic events that occurred was one of the reasons for their migration into the big country that provided better lifestyles with better jobs. In this context, their countries dealt with dictators who exploited every resource belonging to the country by means of tyranny alongside brutality. In regard to this issue, Muslims' migration to the US under the reason of refuging can be argued to have popularly emerged beginning from 1965, which was resulted by the doing of countries like Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, and other countries in the Middle East. Events like civil wars, international wars, ethnic and religious persecution, as well as the anti-Islamism movement were the examples of occurrence that led to the growing Muslim population in the United States. During Obama's reign in 2016, a total number of 38,900 Muslims were refuged into the US, which recorded as the highest number of admissions since the first migration of Muslim communities since 2006 before Obama came into power. However, as soon as Trump took over the throne in 2017, the admission of Muslim refugees dropped to only 4,900 Muslims into the United States in the year of 2019. This occurrence was affected by the Trump's Muslim ban, in which has been one of the most prominent focus of his even before he becomes the president. After taking the office, Trump signed on what is called the Executive Order 13769, which mainly focusing on reducing the number of refugees admission into the US, particularly to prevent the Muslim from entering or fleeing the country. With the motive of protecting the country from foreign terrorist entry, the order was made to ban Muslim entry from 7 countries, namely Syria, Iran, Iraq, Yemen, Libya, Sudan, and Somalia. Trump implemented the order because it was presumed to be fighting against the so-called terrorism brought by Muslims that were affecting the US in a bad way. However, this obviously portrays the hate of Trump towards Islam, because being a Muslim does not make one a terrorist. Why must he cut Muslims when people from other religions also involved in serious crimes? Does being a Christian or Buddhist make someone immune to committing a terror attack? The tragic event Christchurch shooting in New Zealand, for example, proved that terrorism should not be associated to Islam alone. In fact, Islam was merely a religion to be blamed for any terror attack that happened in all over the world. This phenomenon of Islamophobia somehow has torn the image of all Muslims, not only those who are residing in the US. Therefore, we claim Trump wants to abolish Muslims from residing in the US, and not only for the fact that he hates the religion, but also because he is a racist. Thank you.
To sum up everything that has been stated so far, we have already covered all 3 research questions precisely. Firstly, the role and importance of foreign policy in managing the international affairs of a country is maintaining good, healthy relationship with one's neighbors. Moreover, the main principles of each country's foreign policy are pretty much similar, and the main and most common objective of a country is the preservation of its territorial integrity in relation to other countries, as well as its political independence. Next is Western and Islam have their own way of viewing the role of foreign policy, as Islam has emphasized the principle of war and peace in managing international affairs, and also condemns all forms of aggressions and terrorism. We have also discussed the general guiding principles of the United States foreign policy on the refugee. The most crucial principle in the United States foreign policy is to protect the United States of America itself and diplomacy with other countries in the world. Therefore, we suggest that the United States should review their foreign policy and come up with new foreign policy toward Muslim refugees by providing legal aids to the asylum seekers as to make the system fair and efficient. I think that is all from us. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Hanif bin Jamaluddin. My metric number is 2012311. So for my part, I will present on the key points from our topic, which is international relations, key concepts and Islamic perspective. From the topic, I have summarized the topic into 10 key points. Firstly, the importance of foreign policy is to certify economic well-being, political values, and national security, which are constantly major concerns in the United States. This means that a foreign policy is like a reflection of one's objective and principles. Secondly, foreign policy aims to defend a country's national interests while also promoting international security and peace. This demonstrates that a country has their own objective that need to be achieved as well as maintaining good relationships with other countries. Thirdly, foreign policy is significant because it influences the state of international affairs and directs diplomats during negotiations. This illustrates that foreign policy helps a country to make deals with foreign countries. Fourth, the United States is known as the world's leader and must provide the clearest example of foreign policy and international relations. History has shown how foreign policy helps the United States to preserve their status as the major leading country in the world. Next, the security of the country, worldwide interests, awareness of American foreign policy, and assistance to American ambassadors are all part of U.S. foreign policy. This demonstrates that the United States holds on to these policies in order to take action whichever they feel is right for the country. Moving on to the next slide. Moreover, the U.S. guiding principles are to ensure the protection of the country if any negotiations or deals with foreign countries fail. To add, the U.S. foreign policy was invented a long time ago to ensure the status of the United States from allies and enemies during the war. Furthermore, the reason for Muslim refugees migrate to United States is because of the bad living conditions in their own nation as a result of horrible events. Due to this fact, the United States offered better lifestyles and better jobs, and as a result, the number of Muslim refugees has increased year by year since 2006. Plus, the new US foreign policy towards Muslim refugees is heavily influenced by the Trump's Muslim ban. This event shows that the US foreign policy is to reduce the number of Muslim refugees that migrates to the United States. In addition, Trump issued the order on the idea that it would counter the so-called terrorism perpetrated by the Muslims, which was negatively impacting the United States. This illustrates how the ideology of anti-Islam is used to cater the issue of Muslim refugees. So that's all from us. Thank you.